What if I told you that some Western NGOs aren't really here to help, but to control, to manipulate, and sometimes to spy? It sounds unbelievable, but more and more experts and researchers are beginning to say the same thing. These organizations often arrive with smiles, aid, and promises of peace. But behind the scenes, some of them serve a different master, one that protects Western interests, not African sovereignty. While many African governments have chosen to stay quiet, Burkina Faso has taken a stand. The government didn't just suspend suspicious NGOs, it went further. Authorities arrested 8 officials from a European group known as INSO, the International NGO Safety Organization. According to Burkina Faso's intelligence reports, these officials were involved in covert operations. They were allegedly gathering information on the country's military activities and sending it abroad, all while pretending to manage safety programs. But the real question is, what exactly were they spying on? Who were they reporting to? And if one organization has been caught, how many more are still hiding in plain sight? This story isn't just about foreign aid. It's about power, deception, and a silent war for control over Africa's future. 2 days ago, the internet exploded once again with news from Burkina Faso. The headlines were shocking. The government had arrested 8 members of a so-called humanitarian organization, accusing them of spying and treason. The announcement came straight from the country's security minister, Mahamadou Sana, during a televised press conference on October 7, 2025. In front of the cameras, Minister Sana revealed that the individuals were connected to the International NGO Safety Organization, INSO, an organization that had been active in Burkina Faso since 2019. But according to him, this NGO was not what it appeared to be. The arrested officials were allegedly collecting secret information about the country's military, including details on troop positions, defense operations, and the movements of the Volunteers for the Defense of the Fatherland, VDP. Sana explained that the Burkinabè security forces had been tracking the NGO's actions for months, watching quietly as patterns began to emerge. What they uncovered was alarming. With help from alert citizens, investigators concluded that INSO was not a neutral humanitarian group at all. It was a spy network operating under the mask of charity. And in that moment, Burkina Faso sent a message to the world. The era of foreign deception hiding behind aid badges might finally be coming to an end. According to Minister Sana, the organization's headquarters are based in the Netherlands, and it has been operating in Burkina Faso since 2019 under an official agreement labeled number 057-2019 mid-NIC INSO. On paper, the deal was clear. The NGO's mission was strictly limited to humanitarian affairs linked to security and safety. But over time, the group began to cross dangerous lines. Instead of sticking to humanitarian work, the NGO allegedly collected highly sensitive information, not just about local security, but about Burkina Faso's military, political, and administrative systems. According to Sana, they built a detailed picture of the nation's defense network. With the help of a few misled Burkinabè citizens, the group managed to map out the routes, movements, and composition of military supply convoys heading to various cities, data that should have remained secret for national defense. They allegedly kept records of how many soldiers were assigned to protect each convoy, what vehicles were used, even the number of heavy weapons and motorcycles involved in each mission. In simple terms, this NGO wasn't just watching, it was tracking the heartbeat of Burkina Faso's security system, piece by piece. And the more they gathered, the more it looked like humanitarian work was just a disguise for something far more dangerous. According to Minister Sana, INSO's activities went far beyond anything humanitarian. The organization didn't just collect random data, it allegedly mapped the entire structure of Burkina Faso's defense operations. They gathered details on the areas of operation, positions of military units, and interventions of both the National Army and the Volunteers for the Defense of the Fatherland, VDP. But it didn't stop there. Investigators discovered that INSO even recorded the GPS coordinates of battle zones between Burkinabè forces and terrorist groups, as well as the locations of improvised explosive devices. After each clash or military operation, they conducted casualty counts, documenting how many soldiers were lost, how many civilians were injured, and where the incidents took place. Sana revealed that the NGO also tracked the movements of armed groups, the aftermath of attacks, and even took photographs of victims. Beyond the battlefield, they gathered data on road accidents, administrative decisions, and the activities of local security services, painting a picture that went far beyond humanitarian interest. Shockingly, this pattern wasn't limited to Burkina Faso alone. NSO was reportedly conducting similar intelligence gathering in Mali, raising serious questions about the scale of its network. Among the 8 people arrested were 3 Europeans, 1 Malian, and 4 Burkinabè, including the NGO's country director and deputy. These were the individuals allegedly responsible for collecting and transmitting this sensitive information. Now pause and think about that. What does a humanitarian NGO need with military convoy routes, GPS coordinates of battle zones, and photos of war victims? Why would an organization focused on safety and aid be so deeply involved in the heart of Burkina Faso's defense operations? Those are the same questions Minister Sana demanded answers to. And for many Burkinabè, this revelation wasn't just about one NGO. It was a wake-up call to a much larger and more dangerous game being played across Africa. Minister Sana didn't hold back his questions. In front of the press, he demanded, what do they want with this information? Who do they send it to? Where is it stored? How is it used? And what is the real objective behind all this? When interrogated, the NGO's country director and his deputy gave an answer that only raised more suspicion. They claimed the data was simply used to inform other NGOs in Burkina Faso and to write reports for their financial partners. But what sense does that make? Why would foreign donors or local NGOs need GPS coordinates of battle zones or the positions of military convoys? The explanation didn't add up. As questioning continued, their answers grew weaker. The officials admitted that they were only following instructions from their headquarters in the Netherlands. They said they didn't know what happened to the data afterward, only that it was sent and stored in a central database abroad. In other words, once the information left Burkina Faso, it was out of their hands. According to Minister Sana, NSO had built a sophisticated intelligence network across the country. The organization allegedly recruited Burkinabè citizens from different backgrounds, including former members of the country's defense forces, to analyze and interpret the data they collected. These insiders helped translate the numbers into military meaning, troop strength, strategic positions, and vulnerabilities. But it didn't stop there. The NGO system was structured in layers. The first layer collected the raw data. The second, made up of trained field agents, processed and organized it. The third layer consisted of individuals handpicked for their access to key information, people in sensitive posts, close to the military, or involved in security operations. Piece by piece, this network gathered intelligence that could easily expose Burkina Faso's entire defense structure to outside powers. And for the government, that was proof enough. This wasn't charity. It was espionage, hiding behind the mask of humanitarian aid. These operatives weren't random volunteers. They lived in some of Burkina Faso's most dangerous regions, Gulmu, Siena, Tarpo, and Sume, areas constantly threatened by terrorism and instability. The NGO referred to them as community relays. On the surface, they looked like ordinary citizens, traders, gold miners, sometimes even nurses or teachers. But according to the investigation, they were quietly being paid to gather intelligence. What makes this story even more shocking is that NSO had already been suspended by Burkinabè authorities months earlier, back in July. Yet, instead of complying with the suspension order, the organization allegedly continued to operate in secret, collecting data and running meetings online. Minister Sana revealed that it was the NGO's deputy director, Mrs. Guis Aminata Mariana, who defied the ban most openly. From her home in the Bois district of Ouagadougou, she reportedly continued to host online meetings, organize data gathering sessions, and manage field contacts as if nothing had changed. Now let's pause for a moment and flip the scenario. Imagine if an African organization were operating in a Western country, got suspended by the authorities, and still continued its activities in defiance of the law. What do you think would happen? The offices would be shut down. The officials would be jailed immediately. the organization would be branded a national security threat. But when it comes to Africa, the story is different. Western organizations behave as if the rules here don't apply to them, as if African nations are too weak or too afraid to hold them accountable. This arrogance isn't just political, it's deeply rooted in paternalism and racism, the idea that Africa's sovereignty is negotiable. Yet this time, Burkina Faso refused to look away. The authorities acted decisively, sending a clear message. The days when foreign groups could violate African laws with impunity are over. By arresting the officials of NGO, Burkina Faso didn't just enforce its laws, it reclaimed its dignity. Interestingly, the NGO NGO has denied all the allegations. In its official statement, the organization claimed that it only provides safety information to aid workers. According to NGO, the data it collects is exclusively for the purpose of keeping humanitarians safe, insisting that this information is not confidential and is largely already known to the public. The organization also stated, "We remain committed to doing everything in our power to secure the safe release of all our colleagues." But let's be honest, denial is expected. No organization, and certainly no Western-backed one, would openly admit to activities that could brand it as a spy network. Every accused power, when caught meddling in another country's affairs, hides behind polished press releases and carefully written statements. But that doesn't mean the accusations are false. We've seen this playbook before. Remember when Ukraine admitted to aiding rebel groups in Mali, an action that led to the deaths of both Malian and Wagner soldiers? The admission was public, clear, and widely reported. Yet, when Mali demanded answers, Ukraine reversed course, denying everything as if the confession never happened. That's the hypocrisy of the modern geopolitical game. Truth bends to whoever controls the narrative. And that's exactly why countries like Burkina Faso are drawing a line. In a world where words can be twisted and facts buried, self-defense becomes survival. By banning and arresting NGO officials, Burkina Faso isn't acting out of paranoia, it's protecting its sovereignty. In doing so, the country sends a message that echoes across Africa. Foreign influence, no matter how it's disguised, whether through aid, media, or NGOs, will no longer be tolerated. Can an NGO truly act as a spy network for a foreign government? The answer is a resounding yes. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's a documented fact. In 2015, an explosive report revealed that for decades, the U.S. Department of Defense had secretly funneled millions of dollars into charity organizations, using them as fronts for global espionage operations. The mastermind behind the plan was Lieutenant General William Jerry Boykin, a senior military official who served under President George W. Bush. After the 9/11 attacks, Boykin was tasked with expanding the Pentagon's intelligence network. And according to the report, he decided to take a page from the CIA's playbook by turning NGOs into tools of espionage. One of the most shocking cases involved a Colorado Springs-based Christian organization called Humanitarian International Services Group, HISG. On the surface, HISG looked like a normal charity, providing aid and disaster relief to poor and war-torn countries. But behind the scenes, it was being funded and directed by the Pentagon. Its founder, Kay Hiraman, had been on the Pentagon's payroll for years. Through a web of private trusts and nonprofits, the U.S. military secretly channeled millions to HISG to carry out undercover missions. One of those missions was truly disturbing. HISG was reportedly used to infiltrate North Korea, not to deliver aid, but to gather intelligence on its nuclear program. The Pentagon used the organization's unwitting staff, volunteers, and contacts to access information they otherwise couldn't reach. In one early test run, HISG sent a shipment of charity clothing into North Korea, but hidden inside the cargo was a secret cache of Bibles, used as a decoy to test whether sensitive materials could enter the country undetected. Think about that for a second. A charity that claimed to serve humanity was used to violate another nation's sovereignty, and the symbol they used to disguise their operation was the Bible, a book meant to represent peace, not deception. So, when people say it's impossible for NGOs to be spy networks, history proves otherwise. If powerful countries like the US could use humanitarian organizations as intelligence fronts, then it's not hard to believe that the same tactics are being used today, especially in Africa, where Western influence often hides behind the language of aid, safety, and democracy. Now it begins to make sense, doesn't it? When INSO claimed that the information it gathered was sent to its financial partners, who exactly did they mean? It's not hard to guess. Those partners are almost certainly foreign interests, operating quietly behind the scenes. Many analysts and researchers have warned for years that NGOs can become powerful tools of influence, sometimes intentionally, sometimes without even realizing it. Under the mask of humanitarian work, these organizations often carry the ideas, values, and agendas of the West into the countries they operate in. What appears to be charity or education on the surface can, in truth, be a subtle form of cultural and political manipulation. Through NGOs, the West has learned to build soft power, the ability to control and persuade without open confrontation. They appeal to disillusioned youth, offering them new ideas and a sense of belonging under the banner of freedom or progress. They win over the poor and struggling communities by funding aid projects that seem generous but are carefully designed to create loyalty and dependence. This strategy isn't new. In fact, it's ancient. Throughout history, powerful empires have always tried to control weaker nations, not just through armies and weapons, but through ideas, influence, and persuasion. From the Roman Empire's missionaries to the colonial civilizing missions, the method has evolved, but the purpose has stayed the same: to win minds before conquering lands. Today, instead of sending soldiers, the West sends NGOs. Instead of military bases, they build humanitarian offices. Instead of open invasion, they use soft power, a quieter, cleaner, and far more effective way to shape the destiny of weaker nations. And that's exactly why Burkina Faso's response matters so much. By confronting these organizations head-on, it's not just arresting a few foreign officials. It's challenging a centuries-old system of hidden control that has kept Africa dependent, divided, and deceived. Today, NGOs under the guise of human rights, democracy, etc., try to attract the discontent youth and put pressure on the states. In other words, the main purpose of creating most of the NGOs is also to influence and pressure the existing government by indoctrinating people with certain ideas as in the past times and then manipulating them as masses. The West is currently funding non-governmental organizations in different parts of the world. The purpose of funding is to spread their ideas in these countries and to poke their noses into the internal politics of the state. We can boldly say that these Western NGOs have been behind some of the unrest, insecurity, assassination, and even coups across the African continent. These NGOs gather discontented people with various events held under the name of democracy and use this mass for coup d'etat against the political power. Every country has its geopolitical interests, and states express their geopolitical interests by building international relations in different ways. Interestingly, Western countries and the United States realize their geopolitical interests by funding NGOs and spreading their own ideas. This action also contradicts international law. NGOs are capable of damaging the government not only on the political side but also on the economic side. Aids that any NGO provides to the states can seriously damage the development of local small and medium-sized businesses as well. A prime example of this is the supply of wheat to African countries in the late 1990s, which resulted in SMBs in those countries ceasing to be businesses, and as a result, the countries becoming more dependent on Western aid through NGOs. With the above in mind, the funding of NGOs should be controlled by the government, and the activities carried out by said organizations should be coordinated with the government. This can prevent future disturbances that are contrary to international law. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel.